Yud Aleph Nisan, marking the Rebbe's birthday, 119, entering Shnas Hamei V'Esrim, which means that it's reaching Shleimus. And because Mei V'Esrim is Shleimus that the Torah tells us about, so surely it's going to bring the Geula Amitis V'Shlema B'Kariv Mamash. I'd like to start off, number one, that this shiur, like all the other ones, are l'schus u'le'ilui nishmas Miriam Bas Ephraim Ze'ev. She should have the best aliyas haneshama would be that she should come here lamata with Tchias HaMesim, and we should be reunited with all our loved ones. Ve'iked, to see Be'inei Basa, to see the Rebbe himself, who will make a big Farbrengen. If he comes right now, we can celebrate a Yud Aleph Nisan Farbrengen. So, today, we're going to continue the Maimer that we started a couple of weeks ago. And we're up to a middle, just to summarize, just 1 second. To summarize, this is all based on the pasuk, Ve'ata Tetzaveh as Bnei Yisrael, that Moshe Rabbeinu was commanded to connect Yidden with Eretz Soif, and this takes place not just with Moshe Rabbeinu, but in every generation, the same thing, like the Frierdiker Rebbe says in his Maimer, and the Rebbe quotes it, Raya Mehemna. Number one, that he is a faithful shepherd. Number two, he's zan u'mefarnes as Bnei Yisrael be'inyan u'amuna, that he sustains us and feeds us the amuna. And the Rebbe went with a few stages, and we're just going to summarize Mamish Bekitzer so we can go back in to the subject. Moshe Rabbeinu and Mordechai both stood out as Nesi'ei Yisrael, leaders who helped the Yidden, Binyan Emunah. But there's a big difference between Moshe Rabbeinu and Mordechai Tzaddik. Mordechai lived in a time that there was kasis, which means there were serious problems, tzaddis, that the Yidden were suffering, and it was Moshe Rabbeinu, it was Mordechai Tzaddik who rallied Mesiras Nefesh. Moshe Rabbeinu also took care of the Yidden, but he didn't rally Mesiras Nefesh because in his days there was no kasis. The Yidden were living in a cloud. They were living a fantastic life. They were living a life where they had all their needs taken care of, begashmias, beruchnias. Because he did not have the union of kasis in the time of Moshe, so what follows kasis, which is lamoed, was apparently not there. Says the Rebbe, no, lamoed, which means to awaken the Yechidish of a Nefesh, was not only in Mordechai's times, which is understood, because in order to go on Mesiras Nefesh, Al Kiddush Hashem, they had to awaken their Yechidah. And that's what Mordechai Tzaddik had to do. That was his tafkid. And therefore it's understood that he was Zeicha, Mordechai Tzaddik, to awaken in the Yidden such a gewaldige uftu. See, both Mordechai and Moshe both accomplished a lot, but one accomplished more b'pnimius and one more b'chitzonius. Moshe was mamshech das, brought das to the Yidden that it changed their v'nosalachem lev ladas, v'znaim l'shmoya. They gave them their moichin and the midos changed, improved, because Moshe Rabbeinu verbringt with them, and that was Moshe Rabbeinu's tafkid. Mordechai Tzaddik did not change their seichel, did not change their midos. What did he do? He got them to Mesiras Nefesh. Mesiras Nefesh not necessarily will change anything so far as seichel and midas koiches pnimium are concerned. Moshe Rabbeinu did, Mordechai did not. So Moshe had a maila that he brought Aveda Pnimis, and Mordechai had a maila that he brought Mesiras Nefesh. But what's a maila by this is really a chesaron. Moshe Rabbeinu never had to be megala the yechida by the Yidden. Although in the backstage, every Rebbe feeds from Yechida to Chaya. The Emunah that Chaya has, the level of Chaya of the Neshama, is a level which is only Makif. And therefore you can have a Ganiv breaking in, making a Geneva, and saying, God help me. Because the Emunah he has is only from Chaya, which means it's like two separate things. The Chaya sees Elikus, and the conscious part of the person, the Seichel Amidus, Naran, Nefesh Neshama, feels the Emunah, but it's not internalized enough to stop the Ganiv in his tracks. Masha'ein Kain, Mordechai Tzaddik, what did he do? He was Megala the Yechidish B'Nefesh. And the truth is, and that's what brought the union from Mesiras Nefesh. In other words, just to make it more simple, every Rebbe has two functions. Every Moshe Rabbeinu. Function number one is to feed Emunah from Yechida to Chaya. That Chaya should be more nis'oirer. The second function is a chitzonistic one, which means that according to the need of the generation, that will depend on what generation that tzaddik is in. In the time of Moshe, they didn't have kassis, so they didn't have to reach Lamoir, such a high level that the Yechid has to be revealed mamish into action, because they didn't need Mesiras Nefesh. But in times of Mordechai, he did have to be murdered Yechida in order for them to reach a level of Mesiras Nefesh, who can only happen if they had the Gili of Yechidish B'Nefesh. So Moshe had the Maila of Pnimius. Mordechai had the Maila of Chitzonius. What do I mean Chitzonius? That he got Gili HaYechida. But the Yechida's revelation in the time of Mesiras Nefesh changed their Seichel Amidus at all? Lavdafka. As the Rebbe is soon going to say in Sif Yud, that we see that there are Yidden who could have gone through Mesiras Nefesh for Yiddishkeit for many years and take them out of the Kosis, bring them to America. You don't see so strong the union from Mesiras Nefesh anymore. What happened to the Seichel Amidas? It never changed them. The Seichel Amidas remained the same. Because Mesidas Nefesh comes from Yechida. Yechida does not work in a way of Pneumius. It's just a big burst of light, and it shatters everything. On the contrary, to do Mesidas Nefesh, you have to shut down your Seichel, shut down your Midas, your feelings, and everything. You can't be tuned in. They have to be asleep in order for me to jump into the fire. So people in the times of Moshe Rabbeinu, they worked on their pneumius, but they did not have the mile of Yechida. So in other words, every Rebbe in the backstage, yes, he does work on everyone's Yechida, in every generation, to strengthen the Emunah by a Yid, that it should not only be from Chaya, which can allow a person to be a Ganev, breaking in, even though he has Emunah from Chaya. The Rebbe of that generation, the Moshe Rabbeinu, brings from Yechida extra strength, extra dosage to the Chaya, which enables the Emunah to be more internalized. They should feel it. To feel it in a way that it brings to action. And this is where we're up to in Pedic Test. We got up to the last part, where the Rebbe is saying that we find by Achashverosh in his times, after the Gezeda was over, it says in the Megillah, V'kibel ha-Yehudim asher shechilu laseis, kimu v'kiblu. That means there was a kiyum to Matan Torah, a completion to Matan Torah. When? After the Gezeda. What does it mean after the Gezeda? The whole time we're talking about what was the Maila. Why we say that while the Yidden had Mesidas Nefesh, in the time during the Gezeda, that brought about the Kimu v'Kiblu HaYehudim, v'Kiblu HaYehudim as Shechelu Lasois. The Haschal of Matan Torah was 2,000 years ago, and the Shleimus was in the time of Mordechai. But 1 minute, this pasuk is mentioned later in the Megillah, after all the tzaddis were over, after the Kassis, after the Mesidas Nefesh. So what kind of shleimus of Matan Torah took place then? Says the Rebbe that we're going to look at this in 3 levels. There are 3 levels of Matan Torah. Level number 1 was the time when Matan Torah was given the first time, times of Moshe. What was then? Kafa aleim har kegigas. The Eibishter, so to speak, forced them, tricked them, if we may say, into receiving the Torah. How? Chassidus explains, what is this har kegigas? They lifted the mountain like a pot over them. Well, what's a pshat? He gave them an ava rabba. He enticed them. He lured them into it. So that wasn't really anything pneumistic. It wasn't a level that they accepted the Torah b'chol li lev v'nefesh. No. And that's why the Gemara says that the Yidden were able to have a taina until the time of Purim. They were able to have a taina. I was forced into it. I was tricked into it. They were tricked into it. Just 1 second, please. Entschuldig? 1 second, please. Just 1 second. The thing is dying because you didn't bring the wire. Sorry about that. The Kof Aleim Ad Kegigis was not Pnimistic Avodah. And that's why it did not really affect them that you should say this is Shleimus HaTorah. Shleimus HaTorah, Kabbalas HaTorah was later, in the time of Purim, when the Yidden did it me'atzmam, when Gili Elokus was not revealed. Elokus was hidden. And then the Eibishter was hiding from them. And then they stood up. That is a true Mesiras Nefesh. And that's when the Kabbalas HaTorah was completed. But that's step number 2. And here comes Matan Torah number 3. When was that? That was when Mordechai HaTzadik, after the Gezerah of Haman was battled, and the Yidden were free from all their problems, they had again another Kosis Lama'or. What was that? The fact that they're still Akate Avdei Dachveshvedish Anan, that we're still in Golos, we're still not freed. They're still slaves to Achashverosh. They're not physically suffering any Gezeiros, but they're still in Golos. Says the Rebbe, and this is one of the main important points of this Maimer, that a Yid can have Harchava Begashmias Beruchnias. But he knows that, he sees that Oir Ein Soif Baruch Hu Abli Gvul was not yet revealed. There's no Dira B'Tachtonim Begoloi. I'm shattered. I cannot rest. I cannot relax, even with all of the things that you will give me. I'm not satisfied. And for that, the Rebbe brought the word from the Alter Rebbe on the pasuk, Ve'imcha lechafatzti. Mile v'shmayim ve'imcha lechafatzti ba'aretz. Ich will sie gar nicht. Ich will nicht ein Gan Eden. Ich will nicht ein Olam Haba. Ich will mehr nicht als dich allein. What does Alter Rebbe want? He was such a high level that Alter Rebbe was on the level of Atzilus, the shtick, the drug. He was on the level of Atzilus, and even higher than Atzilus. So he had such giluyim. So what was his problem? He says, no, I'm not satisfied. Who better than Alter Rebbe understood what Gan Eden is? And he said, that's dich allein. What is that dich allein? That's talking the level of Einoit Mulvadi, the level of Atzmus, Umahus, Ein Sof Baruch Hu, that he should be begoloi throughout the entire world. Nothing less than that will satisfy him. Not just him. Every Yid. The person is not satisfied Kol Zman as long as there is no Gili Elokus all over universally. Oiden Seif can't be just in one place. If it's here in Ganzen. And if there's one place in the world that's lacking Gili Oid Ein Seif Baruch Abli Gvul, this shows that it's not the thing. It's not Gili Ein Seif. It's not Dira B'Tachtenim. And this breaks a Yid, makes Kosis Lamard, brings him to a level of Kosis that is broken, shattered, tzitreselt, like the Rebbe says in the Maimer, because he wants Gilei Elokus, Mamash. Even if he may be on a level where he can see Gilei Elokus, like Rashbi, had a Gilei Elokus like at the time of the Beis HaMikdash. But you can't be satisfied with that. Since it's not in the whole world, it's a statement that even you don't have it completely. If you would have it completely, then it will be all over the world. That means Eretz Yisrael Bli Gvul is something that either it's here or it's not here. You can have candies, you can have cookies, cakes, ice cream, all different gruchnistic candies. But we're not satisfied with that. Ich will nicht dein Gan Eden, ich will nicht Olam Haba. I want you yourself, the Eibishter Alein. And for this, we daven 3 times a day or more, and that's where we're up to. At the end of Perek Tes, a few lines before the end of Perek Tes. What does the person want? Umevakesh. Gimel pa'amim b'chol yom ayoser. Is begging at least 3 times a day or more. B'sachzene neina b'shuvcha l'tzion berachmim. Shaz hi agilui elokus ba'ad l'gilui atzmus. That's what he wants. So this is the 3rd level of Matan Torah. First one was by Moshe Rabbeinu, Har Sinai. The second one was during the Gezerah of Haman, when the Yidden went Mesidas Nefesh. And that brought about a Shleimus of Matan Torah. Here comes the 3rd one. And the 3rd one is even when there's no Gezerahs and nothing, we're not satisfied. And we have causes that brings us Lama'od to reveal such a high level of our Yechida, higher than the level of Yechida that was revealed in the time of Mordechai, but during the Gezerah. During the Gezerah, level of Yechida was revealed, but it was a limited level. It wasn't the highest level of Yechida. The Rebbe's uftu here, the Chidush, is that there are 2 levels in Yechida. And the way to reach the higher level in Yechida is when a person feels the kasis, because that he's in Galus. Not kasis because there's a guy standing with a whip, or en kevedeh standing there wants to arrest someone who's spreading Yiddishkeit. We're talking about the person's Zebrachenkeit, the kasis, from the fact that Gili Atzmus is not here yet. Let's look inside. V'zehu kasis lamar, and this is the 3rd level of Matan Torah, which is kasis lamar. Shal yedei ha'inyan the kasis mizeh shenimtzoyim begalos, through the kasis, from the fact that we feel we're still in galos, we know we're still in galos. Magim la'amar, we reached la'amar, and the Rebbe is going to say even a higher level. Why does it bring us to Mar? Because where does this stem from? This bankinish and this yearning and being desperate for Gili Ha'atzmos, where does that come from? It comes from the Yechidah Shebenefesh. It comes from our Etzem Nefesh. The fact that the Ratzon of every Yid is there should be Gili Elokus Va'ad, to the extent it really touches his core. That's why he's so broken and crushed. It reaches his very core, the fact that in his Zman Galus is no Gili Elokus, and this comes mitzad etzem haneshama. Mo'er shebeneshama. Shayis kashrus be'elokus, kashrusa be'elokus he is kashrus hatzmis. The connection of the Yechidah Shebenefesh to his will and desire, and this connection to Atzmos is not like 2 separate things getting connected. Chaya is a level where the person's Chaya sees Elokus. There is Elokus, and he sees it. 2 entities. Yechida, as the Rebbe is going to say, there are two levels. One level, which is revealed in the time of Tzaras. That level is Taka from Yechida, but it's talking of a level of Yechida which is limited and does not affect our Seichel and Midas Pnimius. It can get you to jump into fire, but it doesn't reach into the Pnimius of us. Then comes a higher level of Yechida that reaches also to the Pnimius of us. Wow. So here we're going to have two milas. The mile of Moshe Rabbeinu, that it's going to reach the Pnimius. The mile of Mordechai Tzaddik during the Gezerah, that it's going to be Yechida. That's what we're going to learn in Perek Yud. V'yesh loymar, shebechinas hamarda neshama, the level of Moshe, of the neshama, hamizgalis al yedei ha'inyan, the causes that the level of Moshe and neshama, that is nizgala through the union of causes lamar, the causes that level of the neshama, mizeshenim tzarm bagolos. This is the third period when we're in Golos, we're peaceful. We have archava begashmias, archava beruchnias. So the Rebbe says, he nailis yoser, mebechinas hamarda neshama, shemizgalas hayidei mesidas nefesh. It's higher than the level of the Yechida, of the Moir, which is Nizgala al Yedei Mesidas Nefesh. This is such a big Chidush. It's the greatest Chidush that you can be Archava Begashmias, Archava Beruchnias, no Mesidas Nefesh going on, Baruch Hashem, and you're reaching a higher level than what Mesidas Nefesh can reach. A higher level in the neshama, in the etzem hanefesh. How can we explain it? Look the chart. How can we explain this? What's the hezbir? So the Rebbe is going to explain as follows. Why do we say b'chlal? Let's talk about the second Matan Torah, which was in the time of the Gezerah of Haman, when there was kimu mashikiblu kvar, the shleimus of Matan Torah. Why do we say that's a shleimus of Matan Torah? Kimu mashikiblu kvar. Why? Because by Matan Torah, the Yidden were forced into it. By Kaf Halim Har Kegigis. It wasn't by their full will. What was over here by the Gezerah, Me'atzmam, was from themselves. But there's still a shtickl chsaron. You know what chsaron is? A guy was causing it. It wasn't self-generated. It wasn't self-initiated. This kasis was because of Haman. So you could say, just like by Matan Torah, they're accepting the Torah was because of Kafa Aleim Akigigis. It was an external cause, an external thing that was affecting them. The same thing here. The Gezerah from Haman was affecting them. So they did Mesidas Nefesh. They reached the Yechida, but there was an outside force causing it. Masha Enkein, when a person is sitting home, in a comfortable home, when the Gezerah of Haman was over, Achashverosh gave Haman's house to Esther. It was already his hapcha. And Mordechai Tzaddik has a high position. And the Yidden were peaceful. The Goyim were praising the Yidden. Achashverosh was praising them. Now, let's see your kasis. That's a self-generated kasis. Not because of kafa, not because Goyim are forcing us. It's self-created. How? We take our own seichel, our own midos, and we think about it. And convince ourselves how we cannot be ruyik, we can't be relaxed in galus. We have to get out of here. Let's say, for example, there will be no corona, no sicknesses. Everyone will be feeling well. And everyone has parnasa. But there's no Gilui Elokus in the world yet. You say, I need one more thing. I need that everyone should have shidduchim. Okay, everyone has shidduchim. Everyone should be blessed with children. Everyone blessed with children. You'll enumerate all your imaginations, but Gilui Elokus Eitzoif Ablikvol is not yet here. We cannot rest. In other words, to say, is Hashem Mashiach coming? Potter finale tzaddis. That's not the point. That's not the point. The point is not what we're going to get potter from, get rid of. The point is, what are we going to have? And who generates that feeling? The person, while seichel and midas are intact. They're not shattered, like it was back the time of Mesidas Nefesh. The time of Mordechai during the Gezerah, when Mordechai awakened their Yechidah Shebenefesh, then Yechidah Shebenefesh gave a light explosion. What happened? It shattered your Seichel Amidas. They're not coming into play. We're not letting them operate. Seichel Amidas say, no, don't jump into the fire. So you shut everything down. So it's not, my Seichel Amidas are not part of the program. It's only my action. See this nefesh. Masha'en came after the Gezerah is over, and we're at the third period of Matan Torah, which is after the Gezerah is over, and the Yidden have Harchava Begashmias, Harchava Beruchnias, or Mekenish Einsitzen. You can't relax. Why? Because Tachlis HaKavanon B'riyas HaOlamis is not here. My Etzem HaNefesh cannot stand 1 second. The Gilui Elokus is not here. I'm not taking any small candies. I want the real thing. And because it's something we generate with our seichel and our midos, this kasis is going to reach a higher level of lama'or, of our etzem hanefesh, in a way that we have both milas. We have the mila that it's Yechidah Shebenefesh, is shining, but in a way that our seichel and midas are still in operation, and our seichel and midas are acting the way they should. It changes their seichel and midas. The Yechidah shines and fills in our seichel and midas, our nefesh, ruach, neshama, that we become different people. We become better. It affects us. It penetrates us. Bepnimius. So we have the Mila of Moshe Rabbeinu's time that reaches Bepnimius. We have the Mila of Mordechai that it's Yechidah. Says the Rebbe, we're going to even get a higher level of Yechidah. Let's look inside. Let's start from Yud again. The level of Moshe of the Neshama. Mizgalis alideu in the Kosis. That's revealed through the union of Kosis. Mizeshanim tzarm begalos, from the fact that we're still in galos. He nailus said this much higher. Bebechinas hamor than neshama, than the level of moed of the neshama. Shemizgalis hayidei mesidas nefesh, higher than the Yechidah of Mesidas, which is Nizgal of Mesidas Nefesh. In other words, you're saying the Yidden, after the Gezerah of Haman, could reach a higher level than what the Yidden reached with their Mesidas Nefesh during the Gezerah. What's the Inyan? The Mahatay, Mimal Zesh B'matan Torah Hayarak Ha'aschala. Well, from the reasons that are given. Why was Matan Torah considered only the beginning of Matan Torah? Echelu lasis. Ubimei hachashverish hayasah kabbalah. And we say during the time of the Gzeira. That's when the Kabbalah was, V'kibala Yehudim, who the reason is, the fact that they prefaced, they said Nasa before Nishma, B'matan Torah, there was an outside cause that's causing them to do that. I'll give you a mashal. A Rebbe comes to a class and he has to get these kids disciplined. And he has two ways. One way is the proper way. You verbring with the kids, tell them stories, mishalim, and you explain them that they're in their level of seichel midas, it should be accepted and absorbed. Wow, after a certain amount of time, you got them. They'll do it. There's another way. You can get them immediately to behave. You know what? Come in with a big stick and say, kids, these are the rules. Now you see the stick? You're going to get those kids to sit still. But take one step out of the room. Did you change them? Did it change them at all? We didn't work on their seichel. We didn't work on their midas. You terrorized them. You frightened them. An outside cause that did not affect their pneumius. That's basically what happened by Matan Torah. Whether you learn the Pashta Pshat, Hashem frightened them with the mountain lifted above them, or the Chassidish Pshat. He gave them so much ava, he enticed them, such a Gili Elikus. Again, you did not work in a pneumistic way. It didn't affect them. I want to tell you, B'didi Hava Uvda. I have a lot to say about this story that I'm going to say now, but because our time is limited, I'm going to just say it in short. I have a whole article about it. The Rebbe gives in a Sikha of Chelik Tesvav, Lukutei Sichas, the Rebbe talks about educating children in our generation to Avas Hashem. That they're learning and davening for Hashem, not for candies, not for cookies, not for prizes or tickets. We can educate them to want Elokus, as we saw by the Rebbe Rashab, a little kid, 5, 6 years old, he was crying by the Eibishter, appeared to Avram and not to us. And for many years, I did not follow that Sikha. The Rebbe says you could educate them. And if you don't, it means it's your fault. One time I said, this year, I taught Baruch Hashem for many, few decades. I said, this year I'm going to dedicate for that. I'm going to try. And I made a diary, what I did each day. What I did is a long story. I'm not going to get into the details. But the Rebbe's words came true. Nothing to do with my magic. The Rebbe's words came true. And kids were honest. Kids were following. And one day, I told the kids, I have to leave the room. I did this as a test. I have to leave the room. The camera that's hanging in the ceiling of the room is not working. So I cannot see how you're behaving. But then I told them the story about the king is watching, the Eibush is watching, the Eibush says what you're doing, even if Rebbe's not here. And I walked out and I peeked in. And for a few minutes, the kids sat there like tzaddikim. Not one kid made a beep or anything. I saw that Rebbe's words are correct. And I made a case about it, and I wrote it up, put it on my website called chinuchtime.com. The Rebbe's revolutionary approach to chinuch. Why am I bringing this? If you go through Pneumius, you can bring kids to the highest level. And this is what was taking place by the times of Mordechai after the Gezerah. after the Gezerah. Why? Because there was Pnimius. Now, the Rebbe is saying, making a comparison of the first Matan Torah and the second Matan Torah, then comparing it, the second Matan Torah to the third. What was by the second Matan Torah? The time of the Gezerah of Haman, there was Mesiras Nefesh. That's why it was the shleimus of the first Matan Torah was then by the second Matan Torah, because they did it from their own koyach, not because of Kaf Aleim HaKagigas, no Gili Elokus. If anything, there were tzaras, there were gzeiras from Haman, there was fear, there was danger. So, and that's why they had shleimus of Matan Torah. And that's why they were better than what was by Matan Torah. What was by Matan Torah? Kaf Aleim HaKagigas. Let's look inside. Giloi Mumayla. V'me'achashveirosh hoisa Kabbalah mitzad atzmam. The Kabbalah was mitzad themselves. No kafa, no gili elukus, was hell and v'hester, and they from themselves did it. V'yesh loimar. The Rebbe is going to compare this to the two levels of Chaya and Yechida. What's the difference between Chaya and Yechida? Chaya sees elukus. Yechida is elukus. So by Chaya, it's a separate thing. Elukus is one thing, and Chaya is another thing. Let's look inside. The Yeshloimar, Shamuna di Yisrael mitzad zeh, Shaneshama shalamayla, Roya elukus. The emuna that a yid has because of his Chaya. Because the Chaya sees elukus, emuna mitzad asiba, while derech sheikdimu nasa lenishma b'matan Torah tzadagilu dilamayla. What's causing me to have amuna from a Chaya? Chaya is the cause, the amuna in my heart, that is the effect. So there's a cause and there's an effect. Just like b'matan Torah, what caused the Yidden to say nasa v'nishma? The cause was kafa, and the effect was nasa v'nishma. Cause and effect. Let's look on the other side. What was by the Mesiras Nefesh? V'zeh shebimei Achashverosh ha'yisrael ha'Kabbalah mitzad atzmam. Was something that came from themselves. Who ki oz nizgala iskashus belukus shemitzad etzem haneshama iskashus atzmi shemitzad etzem mitziusam. It was such a gilui oir, a gilui mitzad the etzem of the neshama itself. Not something else outside it's causing it. Not because it's seeing elukus. That's compared to Achashverosh's time during the Gezerah. It was me'atzman. But here comes the Rebbe's Chidush, that even this level, the second level of Matan Torah, which was because they had Kosses, they had the Tzaddis, they had the Gezerah of Haman, which was Megala the Yechida, says the Rebbe, B'prati Yos, Yosi Yeshloimar, Shegam Begili Etzem HaNeshama, Yeshnam Dugma Shnei Inyanim HaNizkarim Le'el. We can compare these two Inyanim, the Matan Torah of Kafa, of Moshe Rabbeinu, and the Matan Torah, the Shleimus of Matan Torah in the time of the Gezerah. We can compare that to two levels of the Neshama, of the Etzem HaNeshama. What are they? The Gilui Etzem HaNeshama B'inyan HaMesiras Nefesh. The Gilui of the Etzem HaNeshama. When it comes to the Mesiras Nefesh, Yesh Leima Shebinegel L'Koiches HaGluim Hu Kumoi Dava Noisef. Over there, the Giloi is like a Dava Noisef, an external cause. It's not from itself. It's not me'atzmai. And that's why the Koiches HaGluim can remain untouched. That means Yidden, In the time of Achashverosh, during the Gezerah, they had a gilui of the Yechidish Nefesh to go al Kiddush Hashem, see this Nefesh. But since it was an outer cause, it wasn't them. It wasn't self-bred. It wasn't self-created, self-generated. It was because of the guy. The guy was standing there with the bat. So it's not emistic from themselves. It shattered the Koiches HaGluyim. Ignored it. And the Rebbe brings a proof to this, that it didn't really affect the Koiches HaGluyim. What's the proof? I mentioned it earlier. As we see B'Payel, B'Kama Noshim, that there are some people should be yois and b'makom shayu sham gezeiros ala Torah mitzvahs, that when they were in a place that there were gezeiros on Torah mitzvahs, hoyel lahem mesidus nefesh b'poyel meshech kama v'kama shanim. For many years, they mamish had mesidus nefesh. What do we see later? When they later came to other countries, where you're able to serve Hashem. It's not so noticeable, the Mesidus Nefesh that they had before. What happened? What happened? They had Yechidish B'Nefesh. This Gala, when they were in Russia for so many years, Mesidus Nefesh, and came to America, and we see by some v'chulu v'chulu. What happened? Why didn't their Seichel and Midas kick in? The reason is Zesham the Mesidus Nefesh. Meshach kama v'kama shanim. Why did they stand in Mesidus Nefesh for so many years? The Etzem and Neshama that's higher than the Koiches HaGluyim, it did not change the Koiches HaGluyim at all. It was like a forced behavior because of Gilui Mulmaila. Yechida got revealed, but it didn't affect and influence and penetrate on the Koiches HaGluyim. The Zesh had some Neshama, he had some Gam the Koiches HaGluyim, although you may ask, isn't the Etzem Neshama, like the Rebbe said earlier in the Maimer, that it's the Etzem of all the parts of the Neshama, so it should have affected also the Nefesh Ruach Neshama. K'nez Kaleel Sif Hey. What's the pshat there? She'etzem Neshama hu ha'etzem shalahem. It means only that it's their etzem. It's their essence. The ein ze shayach li'inyanam shel koiches ha'gluyim atzmam. That's sir shalahem. It does not have anything to do with the fact that they have their own tziyur, and the koiches ha'gluyim themselves does not affect them. However, there is something that does affect the koiches ha'gluyim, and what is that? V'hagilui the etzem haneshama, v'zeh nishba v'nitka. The gilui of etzem haneshama, which comes about as a result because the person is crushed. From what? Not from tzaras, which is external sibos. Not from kaf aleim har kegigis. But rather, he's nishba v'nitka mizeh shu nimtza begalus. Hu shegam koiches hagluyim shaloi hatzir the koiches hagluyim hem k'mechad imo etzem. Why is he so broken? Because his seichel and midas are getting in tune with his etzem and nefesh. They're becoming like one. He's mamish tuned in to what my etzem and nefesh wants. My etzem and nefesh wants Ein Sof. to be Bikoli. So if I would shut down my Seichel Amidus and just have a Gila V'Yechida, we're ready to jump into fire. We're talking about the person using the Seichel Amidus to use them as a tool to generate a strong yearning for the Geula, a bankinish, that it should be Nishba V'Nidke calls man the Golas is still here. The Gileakus is not here. So I'm tuning in Mamish to my Etzem HaNefesh. So it's not Shaykh. It's not possible not to have an effect on my Seichel Midas. I will become more Adel. I will become more refined. I will learn more Torah. I will do more mitzvahs. I won't be like those who came out of Russia and whatever happened to them. Why? Because over here, I'm using my Seichel and Midas to tune into the want of my Etzem HaNefesh, and there it becomes completely connected. And that's why it can have an effect on the behavior and changing completely our Nefesh, Ruach, and Neshama. V'yeshloimar, d'zeh she'etzem HaNeshama, v'atzir da'akoichos, hem dugmas shnei inyanim, ולפי שגם עצם הנשמה היא מוגדרת בגדר שלו, היא למעלה מהציר דהכויכס. What's the pshat? We're saying that the Yechidah Shebenefesh has two levels. One level is a level which is called, he has what's called she lamayla me'atzir da'koiches. It doesn't fit into the koiches. Like a teacher goes into the class, he doesn't know how to relate to the kids. He can't enter, he can't get into their minds, into their hearts. That level of our Yechidah, that's because it's bleak full. In other words, its sudden is that it's a bleak full. It's like an oil which can't fit in. Aval mitzad etzem haneshama k'moishi mushreshes v'ha'atzmus hapshitus haneshama v'atzir da'kecheshla hem kul achad. Mitzad etzem haneshama, it's mamish kul achad, and that's why it could penetrate also in the seichel and the midos. Oh, I see the time is running. And therefore the Rebbe concludes, Val Pizeh Yeshloima, the Bechinas Hamoed Daneshama, Shemizgalas Hayidei Mesidas Nefesh, that the level of Moed that's revealed through the Avodah of Mesidas Nefesh, the second Matan Torah, he etzem haneshama k'moishu he mugderes be'inyan hapshita shalamayla mitzir dekayches. It's mugderes. What is mugderes? It's defined with the limitation of being bleak full. Sounds funny, right? It has the limitation of being bleak full, and therefore he can't enter into our seichel midas. Like a teacher who's a big, gigantic genius, a Talmud Chacham, and he can't relate to little kids to teach them something. So his Maila is a chsaron. But ubechinas hamorid haneshama shemizgalis al yedei inyan because it's mizeshin imtzayin bagalus. But the moed of the neshama, that higher level of the etzem haneshama, which is revealed when through the inyan of kasis from the fact that we're in galus, gilui etzem haneshama k'may shehi mushreshes ba'atzmas. It's a much higher level, which is lamaila from gvul and bleak gvul. There's a Sefer Avodas HaKodesh that Chassidus brings a lot of times, that the Eibishter is Shleimusa de Koila, Shleimus of everything. And he's not Keshem sheyesh lekoyach bebilti bal gvul kach yesh lekoyach begvul. Just like Hashem has koyach in the bleak gvul, in the infinite, he also has koyach in the gvul. She'ima ta'omed. This is what the Avodas HaKodesh says. Because if you would say that he only can work in Bli Gvul and not in Gvul, Ata mechase b'shlemusei shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You're calling him deficient. You're saying he has chsaron. He has a chsaron that what? That he can't operate in Gvul. What's a true Talmud Chacham? It says Mashiach Tzidkenu is going to teach Torah to everyone, to the Chachamim Hachi Gedolim, and to the Pashat Yidden. That's the Chiddush. That this level of our Yechidush B'Nefesh that we can tap into through the Kosis from the fact that we're in Galus, that level is so high, it's miyuchad with Atzmus, and therefore it's not limited to the Gvul or Bli Gvul, and therefore it could enter the Gvul of our Nefesh, Ruach and Neshama, and change it, and fix it, and improve it. So we see a gewaldige inyan that's accomplished through the Avodah that we have now in our time of Galus, when we have relatively no gezedos, we have, okay, there are problems in the world. There's sickness, Achman al-Tzandeh, for Shleimet to everyone, and other things. But Mitzad Avodas Hashem, what's expected from us, what the Rebbe is telling us, is this is our Avodah now. This is the third and completion of Matan Torah. The Kibala Yehudim is written in the Megillah where? After the Geseda. Because that's the real V'Kibala Yehudim. Kimu Mashikiblu Kvar. When was that? When you're ma'ored, the feeling of Nishba v'Nidka, not satisfied in the Galus. We will continue, Mitzvah. There is a chart that I prepared just to give it a little bit more light on it, which will maybe explain it a little bit better. So you have 3 columns. The first column is Matan Torah, the first time. The second column, going from right to left, is Kosis from the time of Purim. And the third is Kosis Mitzad the Golus. Nishba v'Nidka, that were broken, that were in Galus. So let's the first go to the right. On the right column, so we had a Kabbalah HaTorah Mitzad Kafa. That's like the Amunah that we have from Chaya, which Mazli Chazeh, which is a Siba Chitzonis. It's an external Siba. Mazli Sheben Neshama, the Chaya, sees Elikus, and it brings us Amunah. So that's an outside Siba. Then comes to the second level of Matan Torah, the causes of Purim, when there was the Kimu. Why was there Kimu? That was because the Avodah was Me'atzmai. The person generated a Mesidas Nefesh in himself, not because of Kafa. But that only brings the Yechida, Etzem HaNefesh, it brings its Megala the Etzem HaNefesh, Mesidas Nefesh, but it's still due to Tzaris, which is a Siva Chitzainus. So therefore, this Gilui that comes to the Yidden in the time of the Gzeira of Haman is like the Rebbe says in the Maimer, like a Dover Zar, an external, a foreign object, which comes, it's shining a big light from the Yechida. It's Mevatl or Seichel Amidas. It's not acting us with a Seichel Amid, not helping our Seichel Amidas or training it. It's Mevatl Seichel Amid, shattering it. And that's the level of the Etzem HaNefesh, which is Mugderes Be'inyan Apshitus. The Rebbe says it's limited by its infinity, by its unlimitedness. So it can't enter the Nefesh Ruach Neshama. Then comes the third period of Matan Torah, Kosis Mitzad Golus. The Yechida, I don't know what the Rosh Hashanah here means. Maybe it's not Mitzad Hasiba, it's Mitzad the person himself brings himself to that Kosis, to that Nishba V'Nidka, something he generates by himself with the Seichel Amidis. And that comes why? Because it's Etzem HaNefesh is connect once Ein Sof to be Begolui. And which level of Etzem HaNefesh? Not the level which is limited with Pshitos, but Etzem HaNefesh, the way it's Mushlish and Atzmos. In that case, it's not limited. It could also affect our Seichel and our Midas. And there we have both milas of both Yechida is being Niskala, and it piles on our Koiches Apnimium. That's the mila that we have in our generation. And this, just to give us a glimpse of what the Rebbe meant in the famous Sikh of Chavches Nisan, where he said, and you saw the Tsar that the Rebbe was experiencing while he was saying it, the Rebbe was Pashat taking off his mask, showing us the excruciating pain that he's going through his whole life. The fact that the Gula is not here, never to be settled, never to be happy. Even if you have Harchava Begashmias, Harchava Beruchnias, thousands of Shluchim, you're putting on tefillin, so much good things going on. The Rebbe says that's not enough. We need the ultimate Geula. Yehiratzen, that should be Taka. We're going to Pesach. It should be a kosher, a freilich in Pesach, because right away will be Nizgala, the Giloi of Atzmus Ein Sof Baruch Hu in front of our eyes, and then we'll have Tchias HaMeisim. We'll see all of our tzaddikim and all of our people that we miss. We'll see them begashmis. They are here. They're joining us, but we want to see them. And this is something will be Nizgala, taketh me ad mamash. Even the Rebbe says this is not something far-fetched. We think, the Rebbe can hold by Nishba v'Nidke. What's about us? Look in the Maimer, the Siftes. The Rebbe says, since it's Tzemach Tzedek was mefarsim this, means it's shaykh to every one of us. That to a certain extent, we have to be mizbainen and bring ourselves to that level of desire and want and ishtaykukus to the Gola Shlema, and we have it already, and which Yid did not give a krechts, and that will surely bring the Gola. Take it from me at Mamash. Again, I want to say, Agresni Ashakayach, and